Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Clash Royale. How you guys doing today? Today is the big day in Clash Royale. It's the Crown Championship Challenge. It is here, the very first 20-win challenge ever inside the game. It's going to be very difficult, but today I want to provide you guys with a short video giving my best tips to ensure you have the most amount of success you possibly can. So before we get to my best tips, let me tell you quickly about the challenge itself. So as you guys know, it's a 20-win challenge. If you make it all the way to 20 wins, you'll get an entry onto Phase 2 of CCGS Fall Season. They've changed the entry price from 1 free entry in 100 gems after that to 3 free entries in 10 gems after that. So a lot of people are going to be happy about that. Kudos to Supercell for listening to the community and adjusting based on their feedback. There are some decent rewards, or more than decent rewards, along the trajectory of your challenge run. At 2 wins, you get 2,500 gold. 5 wins, you get a giant chest. At 9 wins, a magical chest. 14 wins, a legendary chest. And if you're one of the lucky few who get all the way to 12 wins, you get 250,000 gold. Whoa, that's a lot of gold. I don't think I'll get there, but I'll talk in a little bit about what my own personal goals are. But let's just hop to the dates. The dates are important, right? It's the 16th, which is today, all the way to the 21st. So you have 4 days or so to compete in this challenge. Unfortunately, I'll be traveling during all those 4 days. I hope I can get as many matches in there as possible. I am going to Supercell headquarters, but more on that later. So let's go into the tips, right? So I want to talk about what to play, when to play, and how to play in today's video. Let's start with when to play because it's the most quick thing to kind of go over right now, and you guys know how I have a tendency to ramble. So when to play. This is a big one. This might be my best tip overall for you guys in the challenge. Because there's 3 free entries, there's going to be a lot of casual players at the very beginning of the challenge. So you might want to take advantage of all those casual players, albeit you're still going to have to go up against pros because they're trying to get their 20 wins as well at the beginning of the challenge. But I think that there's way more casual players than there are pro players in the game. So math would tell you that you should probably go hard in the first 12 or the first 12, maybe even to the first 24 hours of the challenge if you want to face a diluted pool of players in terms of skill and just competitive experience goes. So I would go hard in the beginning of the challenge and then in the end of the challenge. Day 2 and day 3, my hypothesis is it's still going to be some people, some casual players, of course, using their free entry, but the pros by that time probably are just about getting their 20 wins in, and then the next level of players, like the really skilled players who aren't necessarily pros, are going to be vying and competing during those second and third days, and that, in my opinion, is where things can get a little bit tough. I think that if you wait till the very end of the challenge, that's your best bet, because at that point, even those players, the competitive players who aren't necessarily pros, have already gotten their 20 wins, or they've gotten frustrated and rage quit out of the challenge, right? So I think during the last 12 to 24 hours is another sweet spot. So the takeaway there, at the beginning, when there's a ton of people using their free entries, it's a better time to play, and it's easier to play at the very end when it's just more casual people who because all the pros by that point, and any good player already hit 20 wins, they have no reason to keep playing the challenge. So that is when. How about what? Well, what to play. I've been flashing decks every like 30 seconds or so on the overlay right now to give you some deck suggestions for this challenge. Now, there's no one-size-fits-all deck out there. There's no magical deck, and I am not going to promise any of you guys 20 wins if you're watching this video. I just want you guys to do the best you possibly can. So as far as deck selection strategy goes, my #1 piece of advice for you guys is to pick an archetype that you're already very comfortable with, okay? So if you're a Siege player, stick with the Mortar or the X-Bow. Those are really good right now in the meta, especially X-Bow at tournament level standard. If you're a Hog Cycle player, stick with Hog Cycle. If you're a bridge spam player even, I said it. if you're even a bridge spam player, I would even stick with that. I've seen a lot of pros using bridge spam, especially in Asia, RPL and CRL, using a lot of bridge spam still and having success with it. That's going to be my next video, actually. Even if you're a graveyard player, I wouldn't make any drastic changes to your own gameplay and switch to an archetype that you're unfamiliar with for this challenge just based on the balance changes. I think that would be an overreaction, and although you might have some early success, maybe get up to 5 or 10 wins, I don't think that, you know, in the long run, to get that 20 wins or to get up to 14 to get your legendary chest, I think you're probably going to want to stick to an archetype you're really familiar with. However, I wouldn't be afraid to make adjustments. So pick one of these decks that fits into your play style, your comfort level, and then if you're losing, not every match, I wouldn't make changes personally after every loss. I would make changes after my failed entry. For example, I'll use my free entry. Let's say I go 6-3. At the end of the 6-3, I would sit down and watch all my losses, one after another, and try to pinpoint what was the point in this match that things went really wrong? What cost me the game? Sometimes that will be very apparent. Sometimes it will be more a cumulative set of plays that you kind of messed up, right? But try to kind of pinpoint what was the weaknesses and then answer this. Was the weaknesses my fault? Were the mistakes my fault? Or were they a weakness that was inherent in the deck that I selected? Then you do a little bit of deck doctor, right? You try to fix that weakness in the deck by changing or exchanging or adding just 1 or 2 cards. You don't want to change the whole deck around. So most of the time it'd be defensive cards. For example, wow, I noticed that all 3 of my losses came to Golem or Lava Hound decks. I'm going to add an Inferno Tower instead of this Cannon or Tornado in this deck because I know that will bolster up my defense against that archetype, which obviously I struggle with. So beyond that, guys, these decks that I'm showing you right now, they all work for 20-win challenges because these are decks that pros have already gotten multiple Grand Challenge wins in a row with. I've selected them from pros. And what I would do is if you're not sure what the heck to play, I would go with either Lava Hound, Golem, or Siege or Expo deck. Primarily because Golem and Lava Hound, you have less opportunity to make big mistakes. I mean, you can make big mistakes, don't get me wrong. But if you have a feel for the archetype already, you're making less decisions over the course of a match because the deck is a bit cheaper. So it's not like you're picking up bait for the first time, spell bait, or you're picking up a hog cycle deck or a miner cycle deck for the first time. And that's a little bit more difficult, in my opinion, to get to that next level on. So that would be my suggestion. Siege is good because a lot of these opponents are going to be aggressive and inexperienced, and as a Siege player, you can really capitalize and sit back and just, you know, let them make the mistakes. You know, you as a Siege player, you can go all the way up until a 6-minute point in the match if you want to, and just play that defensive expo, wait for the opening, and a lot of times they'll give it to you. So that would be my what to play. How about how to play? So I wouldn't advocate making any drastic changes in your own gameplay. You have to stick with your play style, but you should also try to be aware of your biggest weaknesses in play style. I want to give you 2 main tips when talking about how to play in the 20-win challenge. Number 1 is you want to be a little bit more defensive minded because you have to use this deck, or you have to at least go in this challenge for the long haul, right? You have to get all the way to 20 wins in order to move on to round 2, or at least 14 to get your legendary chest. So you want to pick, you don't have to pick a super defensive deck. You don't have to play a control deck. But you do want to make sure that the number 1 priority for you going into any match in the 20-win Grand Challenge, what is it called again? Crown Championship Challenge. Crown Championship Challenge. I don't know why. I always forget the name of the darn thing. But the Crown Championship Challenge, what you should be doing is the number 1 thing in every single match is before you go all out, before you make aggressive plays, try to identify every card in your opponent's deck. I know they say that a lot on my channel, but it's so important. At that point, you'll know their best counter to your win condition, and you'll know what your best counters are to their win condition. After that, you can make more risky and calculated aggressive moves throughout the match. But always, always, always identify what deck your opponent is playing. The second thing you want to do is identify, okay, I figured out what my opponent's playing. Now you want to identify if your opponent is being too aggressive or too passive or just right. If they're playing just right, it's going to probably be a challenging match for you. You just don't want to make mistakes, and you want to try to pick your spots for when your opponent's counter is out of cycle for your win condition. So if their cannon isn't in their hand and that's their only answer to your hog, well, you have to pick your spots if you're playing up against a player who is really smart and not too aggressive, not too defensive. If you're playing against a player who's too defensive, it's easy in a way. What you can do is you can kind of chip and prod, and you can kind of juke them out. You can do little pushes, and they'll overcommit on defense. And then once they've overcommitted once on defense, they really line themselves up to be punished with a big push after that. So you use these little mini pushes. They overcommit, they overdefend, and you're creating positive elixir changes on offense, and then eventually you can cash in. If they're playing too aggressively, it's the same thing, only you're making positive elixir exchanges on defense and turning that into solid offensive production. So guys, those are going to be my tips. I said I wasn't going to go on for super long this video. I just want to give you some easily digestible tips that you can hopefully do the best that you possibly can in this challenge. I wish all of my viewers and subscribers the very best in this challenge. It should be a lot of fun. I'm going to be using the Golem Lumberjack deck that I showed 2 videos ago now. I still really love the deck. I think it will do really well in the challenge. I don't think I'll get 20 wins, but my personal goal here is to just use my free entries, and then I'm a dirty gemmer. I don't mind paying for entries after that. So then I basically just want to keep improving. I want to keep improving and see if I can get that legendary chest and see how much further I can push beyond that. If I do get the 20 wins, you can bet your bottom dollar that I'll be saving my replays, because I will be overseas and sharing them with you when I come back. So guys, thank you so much for watching. A huge shout out to my YouTube partner Bren Chong. Check out his information in the description below. Another shout out to my Patreon supporters. Love you guys, and I love all of my viewers. So as always, take care, guys.